This episode is brought to you by our good friends at NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV. I'm sure by now you've all gotten back into your Sunday routines, but they could be even better. With NFL Sunday Ticket and YouTube TV, you get the most live NFL games all in one place, every game, every Sunday, and you can even watch up to 4 different games at once with multi-view, one of my favorite inventions of this decade. It's exactly what you need to catch all the action, make your Sundays more magical, and also YouTube TV is great. I got it this year. It's awesome. Sign up now at youtube.com/BS. Device and content restrictions apply. Local and national games on YouTube TV. NFL Sunday Ticket for out-of-market games excludes digital-only games.
Hey, Eagles fans, this is Chris Franklin from NJ Advanced Media, and welcome to the No-Huddle Show podcast, the show where we discuss all things related to the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, before we begin, I want to remind you that you can read our content on NJ.com/Eagles and make sure to bookmark that to get the latest Eagles news and analysis. Today, I'm once again joined by my No-Huddle Show co-hosts Bob Brookover and Cayden Steele. Well, today we had joint practices that happened. We had a little skirmish as well, too. We're going to get into that a little bit. The Eagles had their first preseason game last week, and they're preparing for recording this on a Wednesday, preparing for their next one against the Patriots on Thursday evening. But before we get into all those topics and everything about this team, let's bring in Bob and Cayden. Guys, how are you doing today?
Hey, Chris. Good morning or afternoon, whatever it is, whatever time zone you're in. Doing great. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. You know, it's 5 o'clock. The time zone I wouldn't mind being is 5 o'clock somewhere. We all know that's happening somewhere, so I could use a couple of those right now. Cayden, how are you doing?
Yeah, doing good. Just excited to talk about the Eagles. The season's getting closer, right? I think we've all been going through training camp and preseason. There's still 2 games left and more practices, but I'm looking forward to, things getting on their way pretty soon.
Yeah, it's starting to heat up a little bit as well, too, and it's getting kind of interesting in certain aspects of this team as well. And first off, we're going to start, since it's so fresh, and about me and Cayden and I we're still in the Philadelphia area right now. Bob, you're up there in Massachusetts at Foxborough. You had a chance to see the joint practice that the Eagles and the Patriots had up there. It looked like, from all accounts, like the Eagles had a pretty decent day in terms of their performance, especially the offense. I just want to get, what are your thoughts or how things did? What are your takeaways from that practice?
Yeah, my takeaway on the offense, it was a good day, but I wouldn't say it was a great day. It wasn't like it wasn't like Tom Brady did to them in 2014 when I think Jason Avant came off the field and said, "Did you see Tom Brady?" It wasn't one of those days, but it was a good day. It got off to a really good start. I think Jalen Hurts hit 5 of his first 5 passes. He had a great throw to Dallas Goedert in the one-on-one drills to start those off. And there were some running plays that I thought looked like they were really popular. It was a chance to really see Kellen Moore's offense a little bit more revealed on this day. They had one play where the 2 guys on the left side of the line pulled to their right, and Saquon went to his left, and it was wide open. It would have been a big gainer. And then there was another really cool play where it was an RPO, but he faked to pulled the ball out of Saquon's hand, and Will Shipley was on the field, and Will Shipley was out in the flat, and nobody was near him. It was just a nicely designed play. And then it's probably the best play of the day was Saquon ran a wheel route and just got open. It was not an easy catch, and it was not an easy throw. But it was a great throw for a touchdown. Terrific play. Jalen went to, as you might expect, AJ a lot, and was, that pairing was great. AJ said, we didn't have the best one-on-ones. He said, but when the team came, we were pretty together. He obviously went to, as he always does, went to Devontae quite a bit. And you could see the weapons were there. A little later on in practice, the Eagles had some issues protecting Jalen, and there was one series of 5 plays where he was under pressure quite a bit, and the series ended with him being touch sack, whatever qualifies as a sack in these things, which we never get to see sacks, but. He was visibly frustrated, and I asked him about it after practice, and he was like, "Have to watch the film. And I said, "But you were frustrated, right?" He goes, "Yeah, have to watch the film." So it was clear that there were things that he didn't like about the practice, but you could see how this offense could be explosive. I guess the scary thing is we're not going to probably get to see it again until the season starts in Brazil against Green Bay because, other than against each other, we'll see that. But I don't think they're going to play. The starters are going to play on Thursday, and I definitely don't think they're going to play against the Vikings in the last preseason game. The other takeaway, I didn't get to see much defense because I was the only guy up here really watching it, and so my eyes were on the offense most of the time. I did get to see. I happened to be looking up when interceptions were made by Zach Bond and Jeremiah Trotter. The Zach Bond one, the Kobe Dean kind of set up by breaking up the pass in the end zone, and then ball came into Bond's hands. Jeremiah Trotter just keeps impressing and impressing. I'm fascinated to see where this goes because I think Vic Fangio is a guy who if he sees a kid that can play, he's going to play him. And the guy who hasn't flashed a lot in this camp is Devin White. I don't think. You guys might disagree. The one more thing I'll hit on before we move on, though, is watch the kickoff returns, which this was the melee part of it. But in addition to the melee part of it was how much work needs to be done on these kickoff returns. The Eagles kicked 7 times. Jake Elliott and Braden Mann was mixed in there once. They tried to do a funky thing with him, see where he could drop the ball inside that 0 to goal line to 20-yard line zone. 7 kicks, 3 of them resulted in penalties. Now, some of them might have been against the Patriots. I don't know because you couldn't really tell what they were calling. The only one you could really tell was Jake Elliott tried a squib kick, and it fell short of the 20-yard line, and it landed like the 23-yard line. Then, there was a little break, and then the next time they came back to do that, it was the Patriots' turn to kick, and they also used their punter. And he made a kick. Was an incredible kick. He just angled it perfectly at the right side of the goal line, and Lou Nichols fielded it at like the 1 and immediately stepped out of bounds at the 1-yard line. Oh my God, people would freak if that happened in a game. But they had other good ones, and then the things started getting chippy. It started when Isaiah Rodgers returned a kick, and I found out later that it was Christian Ellis. I couldn't immediately tell who it was. Hit him, took him to the ground, stripped him. Patriots picked up the ball, ran into the end zone. They're celebrating, and the Eagles were furious. They're all screaming on the sidelines. I could hear. Well, I couldn't figure out who it was because so many of them were screaming. But one of them was all I could hear was, "That's effing BS." Are we allowed to curse on this podcast? I don't know. But that's that's effing BS. Because you guys want to start playing that way, we'll start playing that way. I'm not sure if it's the next kick, but it was either the next kick or the 2 kicks after that. Kenny Gainwell fielded the ball. He ran upfield, did not like the way he was hit, shoved the guy, and the next thing you know, players are running from both sides in the middle of the field. It never got totally out of control. It didn't become the Giants-Lions kind of brawls that kept guys fine. Nobody was kicked out of practice or anything like that. But it was a nice little exchange, and the whistle started blowing, and one of the coaches started yelling, "Team, team, team." And, they immediately went to team after that, and so that was. Those were the highlights of what I saw yesterday. I wish I had seen more of the defense, but I didn't. But from what I saw, the offense, there were good parts, and there were some. I think there's some reason to be concerned about this offensive line in the interior, but we'll see what happens. The Tyler Steen, I think the Tyler Steen, Mekhi Becton battle is still very much on.
Cool, and it's pretty. I laugh when you say Christian Ellis, the former Eagles linebacker, who they tried to sneak through last year and keep on the roster by releasing them and hoping they add somebody else and add them back. Yeah, that didn't work out well. Look at them now, causing ruckuses and stuff. But you brought up a good point, an interesting point in terms of that offensive line, because if they're not, and the more and more I think about this, if they do continue to have issues at that right guard spot in terms of stunts, in terms of blitzes coming on there, you're effectively cutting off. You're forcing Hurts, especially if you get a good rush from that same side from the edge rusher. You're forcing Hurts to go to his left, or you're cutting off half the field, and you're doing scramble drills. And that can be a real issue from here on out. So, thanks for that update. It's something to monitor as we go into the rest of this training camp, because if they can't figure this out, they have some serious problems in terms of the pressure and potentially limiting this offense. Now,
it's one of those things too that they just haven't had to deal with in a long time. They've been such a good offensive line, always one of the best in the league, and they really haven't had to deal with what do we do if this doesn't work on the offensive line? And it's the first time in a long time that they've really had to deal with that kind of issue.
Who knew we'd see this coming when it comes in terms of that? Now, another things that happened before the practice even started, it stood out. It was sort of big news. Before they started really competing in earnest, we got our first glimpse of the rookie defensive back Cooper DeJean in pads. He's been limited in his work. He's been off to the side. He started this season on the non-football injury list because of his issue that happened while he was working out. But it's another step in his development, which is needed. The Eagles want to revamp this secondary, and he's a key part not only this year but for the future. I'm going to ask you this, Cayden. How does his return impact the rest of the secondary, and who should be worried the most that now he's back in working his way into the rotation in earnest?
Yeah, it could impact a lot of things, especially if he comes out right away when he's able to participate in team drills, and it makes a good impression, because we heard Vic Fangio already talk about how the fact that, even though Quinnen, and just from what we've seen, it can handle, the nickel duties and move to the outside cornerback spot on base, it's not exactly practical to keep moving him from both spots. And ideally, and not more than ideally, most likely, no matter what situation you're in, I think you're going to see Quinton Mitchell on the field very often this year. So his spot's pretty locked and secured. So if you want him to learn that one position and you hope it's the outside, this could affect Isaiah Rodgers or Keely Ringo, the other two guys competing for that outside spot, because Cooper might be a natural fit in the slot. That's where a lot of people think that his best fit might be. Because of his physicality, for one reason, and his ability to come up and on run fits and just hit you. And you have to do that to be a nickel corner. And it might be the best case scenario is that if he's back and he plays really good, that you get the two young guys that you drafted with your first two picks of this draft that you were both really excited about for the Eagles, to get them on the field at the same time. If Cooper, and it's going to be tough because he's not going to have a lot of time to do it. He said he's not going to play against New England. He did talk about yesterday that maybe Minnesota, the last preseason game, is a realistic target date for his debut, and so that might just give him one preseason game to prove this. So maybe this doesn't happen week 1 or week 2, but by some point this season, the Eagles might realize their best combination. And Vic talked about the reason that Quinnen's been playing in the slot and been playing in on the outside is because, or at least playing in the slot, is because he feels like that gives him the best combination possibly right now. But if Cooper plays well in the slot and proves that he's a natural there, and it might make them feel comfortable moving Quinnen. So then you have Quinnen, Cooper, and Slay, and that might be your best combination going forward. And that leaves guys like Isaiah Rodgers and Keely Ringo kind of as the odd man out, even though they've had really good camps. They might they might not get their starting job, but more likely they probably get the starting job, but they might lose a starting job possibly this year if Cooper comes back and makes an impact early. And then those guys don't have the versatility that honestly that Cooper and Quinnen, they at least haven't shown it. Keely is a bigger corner who's a really good athlete, but I'm not sure if he's twitchy enough to play in the slot. I mean, you got to go against a lot of guys who are really good in short areas, and I'm just not sure if that is Keely's strength. I think he has a lot of strengths that you should be excited about, but that's definitely not one of them. And then Isaiah, I mean, there's no real long-term commitment. He's on a 1-year deal. He'll be a free agent after this year. So if it's close between him and Cooper or just about the same, I mean, the edge will go to Cooper. And he doesn't really necessarily he might be a little better in the slot than Keely, but he's not like he's played a ton of it in his career. And he views himself as an outside corner. So both of those guys might get stuck if Cooper can come back and make an impact in the slot, because Quinnen's going to start, Slay's going to start. That leaves up to 3 spots. And then if Quinn is the preferred option on the outside, Cooper's got the versatility that they don't, and the draft pedigree. So all those things matter.
And we all know how Vic Fangio loves to use those corners and safeties interchangeably and use them in different in various same roles. It may all look the same pre-snap, but he uses them all over the field. And because you've seen corners be safeties, safeties corners, that shell game that he likes to play, try to confuse the quarterback, definitely comes in a role. Now, speaking of trying to confuse the quarterback and putting pressure on him, a little bit of some Eagles-related news in terms of this. Edge rusher Haason Reddick has reportedly demanded a trade months after the Jets acquired him from the Eagles for that conditional 2026 third-round pick. That would have become a second, if he had, I believe, 65% of the snaps and he had 10 sacks, which if he's traded from the Jets, which the Jets are digging in saying, no, we're not trading him. Yeah, if he does that with the Jets, hey, all right, the Eagles get that one. If not, well, we know it's a third-round pick for sure because he didn't attain those those qualifiers. Now, I want to start with you, Cayden, on this one. Do you think the Eagles eventually, when all said and done, made the right decision, even if it means losing the sack production that he had over the past 2 seasons, which was 27 sacks?
Yeah, I'll start with saying this before getting into that. This is not a good look for the Jets, the starters, for Joe Douglas. This is for a team that doesn't want to have distractions after everything that happened last year. Not the best way to get off to a good start. But for the Eagles' purposes, I guess there's a caveat to it, because if you want to win a Super Bowl this year perspective, Haason probably gave you a better shot than Bryce Huff and Josh Sweat from the edge rushers, because he's just been more productive and he's gotten more experience. And I think in big moments, we've seen it in the NFC Championship and the playoff run in 2022. That December, he was amazing. So it was still pretty good last year for the most part, besides at the end of the year, which, pretty much every player on the team kind of regressed to them. But from that perspective, if you were thinking who would give you an edge on the field, I'd probably still lean Haason. But at the same time, I think the Eagles made the right decision, because at his age, he's creeping over 30. You're not going to want to pay a guy the amount of money that he wants. Obviously, the Jets don't want to do that either, which, like I said, doesn't make any sense why you would trade for him then. But they didn't want to give up the long-term deal. They didn't want to give up the guaranteed money, and which I understand to a certain extent. You don't want to be tied to guys who might. I mean, your edge rushers can play for a long time, but you don't want to get tied to that money for a guy that could possibly regress. And then 2, you got to pay a lot of other players. We've seen AJ and Devontae receive contract extensions this offseason, Landon Dickerson, and there might be more players coming up in the future. It might be a little early to say this, but like in a couple of years, it might be Jalen Carter, and in the future, maybe Quinn and Mitchell. Like, you're going to have guys to pay, and you can't pay everyone. So, I mean, they made a financial decision. And Howie, in the past, might been regretful about some of the decisions for the players over 30 that he's given some money to. Look at James Bradbury currently, and I know it's different. Edge rusher, corner. Typically, corners fall off faster than edge rushers, but he might be thinking about it a little differently and how he spends his money. He doesn't want to give it to a guy that's 30 plus years old. So from that perspective, in the long run, it's probably the right decision. In the short term, maybe it's going to bite them if these edge rushers like Bryce Huff and Sweat and especially Nolan Smith can't take a jump. It could end up hurting them. But Howie has to, make tough decisions. And I think this was one of them, and it wasn't easy, but it's still the right one.
What do you think, Bob? Do you think it was the right decision?
Yeah, I'll just flat out say yes, because do you think the Eagles would really want to be going through this? There's obviously a big discrepancy in what Haason Reddick thinks he's worth and what the Jets and Eagles thought he was worth. I think he's 19th right now. His $15 million average salary on the 3-year deal he signed with the Eagles in 2022 is 19th in the league. It probably hurts him that he's behind Bryce Huff, 2 spots behind Bryce Huff in that regard, who he's certainly, he's 4th in sacks since 2020. Since 2020, he's 4th in sacks in the NFL, and yet he's not seeing the kind of money these other guys said. It's really sad story. I talked to Brandon Graham about it yesterday and wrote about it for this morning. Brandon is like, if you pay the guy, he's going to play. He said, I'm starting to get a little worried that this is going to become a Le'Veon Bell thing where he doesn't play. I don't think it will come to that, but you never know. If a guy decides to dig in his heels and miss a season, it was obviously a horrible decision for Le'Veon Bell because he sat out an entire season. He came back. He got money the next time, but he was never the same player after missing that year. But from the Eagles standpoint, could they miss Haason Reddick? Yes. Edge rushers, definitely a question mark because you look at Josh Sweat. He finished with 2 sacks in his last 11 games last year. Didn't seem to be the same player. The other thing that doesn't get talked about with Josh Sweat is how happy is Josh Sweat to be here. He took a pay cut. It's one of those things. Could that unhappiness affect his play, or will it affect it positively because he's like, I want to get paid next year, and the best way for that to happen is for me to go out and have a great year. But then, on the other side, you got Bryce Huff, who's everybody I've talked to says is a terrific pass rusher, but we've gone over this many times. Can he stay on the field for 3 downs? Can he stop the run? That's still to be proven. And then you got Brandon Graham, who's going to one last hurrah. We know he's not going to be on the field. Last year, I think it was 34% of the defensive snaps he was on the field. Figure it'll be about the same. He still played at a very high level, but he's the 3rd guy in your rotation now. And then the other guys on the roster on the 90-man, I think, have a combined 15 sacks. So you're hoping guys like Nolan Smith and Jalen Hunt and even Patrick Johnson, who made the greatest play ever to help the Eagles get the win last week in their first preseason game. You're counting on those guys, really unknowns. There's some real question marks at edge rusher, and I was talking to Brandon Graham about this yesterday too. And it's so hard for edge rushers to flash in the training camp and preseason when you basically you can't do what you're paid to do. You can't tackle guys, and you can't sack the quarterback. And Brandon was funny. He goes, "Yeah, but I always give them a chest bump, and after they throw the ball, I'll just let them know that I'm there." That was very funny when he told me that yesterday. But it's a fascinating situation that we're going to be watching all season. And as Brandon said, I hope at some point that Haason Reddick gets this done. The great point made by Cayden there is nobody on the Jet side, but especially Joe Douglas, looks good. I don't know how you make that deal without having a contract agreement. I don't think many general managers would have done that, but he did that. And Joe's made some good talent assessments and draft picks with the Jets, but things like that make you wonder about him as a general manager.
Yeah, I think it's a fireable offense, and not immediately, but it's one of those things is say the Jets don't get to say the AFC Championship game or they make a deep playoff run. I'm sorry, that's to me, if I'm Woody Johnson, that's sticking a lot in my mind because that's just contract. Well, it's a basic contract thing, especially if you get a guy for that one whom wants to get paid. Wants to get paid. You're just like, all right, we'll trade him and then we'll try to see that. Oh yeah, we're not going to pay him. We don't have the money. Now, maybe some of that's on Woody Johnson. We know his history, so maybe that's on him. But getting back to more Haason himself, I'm taking I know it's contrarian. I'm taking that one. I still think I would have tried to find a way, even though he wants all that money, like right north of 25. If he wants something around, say 25 million a year, and that's in line with Danielle Hunter, who's now with the Texans. That's in line with Montez Sweat, who's with the Bears. If you got a contract like that, I think it's worth it just because we've seen what happens with this defense if you don't have access to pass rush. You can have the best secondary in the world. You can have all world secondary guys. You can have Patrick Surtain in that secondary. You can continue to Slay. You can have Quignon, all those guys. But if you don't have anybody to rush the passer, can they keep up for 5-6 seconds? And that's when you start to get picked apart. And I think when you look at what Haason Reddick's able to do in terms of coming off the edge, in terms of impacting the game, because I'm telling you, I know everybody talks about the blind side on the edge rusher, which Josh Sweat's role, stuff like that. When you're a quarterback and you know you can see direct line of sight, you have pressure coming for you, that messes with you a lot. The fact that it speeds up your clock, you have to run around a little bit more, and it makes it it's off. And then I know everybody has another thing else we've heard a lot in terms of Haason Reddick was he doesn't like going in coverage. He doesn't want to do it as much. He didn't like doing it last year. The funny thing is when you look at Pro Football Focus, if you look at the regular season, he had more coverage under Jonathan Gannon. I think it was 63 coverage dropbacks in coverage as opposed to last year was, I think I want to say 42 or 43. And Fangio does not. I think it was more of a matter of respect in terms of the defensive coordinator as a whole, because when you switch from Desai and then you go to Matt Patricia, especially the Matt Patricia one, I think it's like, it's almost like that SpongeBob meme. Yeah, I'm going to head out. And I think he checked out in terms of that. But yeah, it's convoluted. Maybe I'm crazy, but I would have tried to find a way to pay the man and keep him here for at least 2-3 years. And then I still think it would have helped your defense overall. Am I crazy?
No, I don't think you're.
I think you're crazy, but not because of that. Not because of that opinion.
Thanks. Thanks.
Hey, you throw me a 3-2 fastball, pal, I'm going to hit it.
Well, I don't know. Maybe if I'm in Phillies, never mind. Let's not go baseball on this spot on there. We'll end on this note here. We're approaching final cuts. I mean, hard to believe it. Thursday's the second preseason game. Final cuts are within view. They're coming up right here. We all know the James Bradberry situation where he's on the table as potentially being one of the guys that are either traded or cut. He's trying to converting from cornerback to safety, but we're going to take him out of the equation because it's been talked. We've talked about it. Everybody else talked about it, but there are other guys on this roster who are veterans who were on this team last year who could be fighting for their jobs as well too, and fighting to see if they're going to still be wearing his Eagles jersey come week 1 when they're in Brazil. Bob, I'm going to start with you on this one. Who's fighting for their life job-wise on this Eagles roster?
I'm going to start by saying I'm not sure James Bradberry is anymore. And that's based on the one person when they talk when we're at training camp who I think is more honest than anybody else and more revealing than anybody else is Vic Fangio. And when he gave a shout out to James Bradberry last week saying, he's asked about how he's adjusting to playing safety. And he said, you know what? He's doing a pretty good job. This guy understands football. He knows what he's saying. He knows how to make a play. And you know what? We have seen that in training camp from him. And they are thin at safety. I'll go to Cooper DeJean. I'm eager to see what they do with Cooper DeJean when he comes back, if they put him at safety. But I know that's off the beaten path here. But I'm starting to think maybe James Bradberry. Obviously the trade is always in play, but that he's going to make this team. But we'll go back to the secondary and Cooper DeJean being back to guys who, played a role. I don't know if you call them veteran guys, but these guys all played a role last year in that secondary. Eli Ricks, Tristan McCollum. I think we the other thing about this secondary is Sidney Brown isn't even back yet, and he's gonna be back at some point. Zach McPherson's another one. Josh Jobe, guys like that. Are all in trouble in terms of being on this 53-man roster. I think Avonte Maddox is safe, but maybe that changes with Cooper DeJean. I think there are some interesting guys in terms of just veteran guys that they added, and I'm not really answering your questions directly. Who we might not see. John Ross is going to be an interesting one, and now we haven't seen Paris Campbell on the field for a while. You would think one of those two guys would make it, but I don't think both of them are going to make it. Then you got guys like Matt Hennessy, who, when they signed him, you thought, oh, maybe he'll be the backup center. He's not the backup center. That seems to be Brett Toth, and then you have Dylan McMahon is behind him. So guys like that, I think, are in some trouble here as we get down to the cut down day. But I'm fascinated to see what's going to happen with James Bradbury, because he's not a guy that I would cut just to cut or trade. I wrote a column about this, I think, way back in May, because he's such a good locker room guy who does everything the right way. I wouldn't be in a hurry to get rid of him. And also because he's showing in this training camp that, hey, you want to put me in safety? I can still make plays. I know how to play this game. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'm on the ones that think that Bradbury's going to be on the roster, but I'm going to press you. I want you to name one guy you think is going to be gone. I want to press you on this one.
You're not a nice man.
I can come back to you if you need some time.
And he's got to be from last year.
Yeah, he's got to be from last year's roster.
He's got.
I can come back to you. I can go to Cayden.
Come back to me. Go to Cayden.
I'll
have an answer for you when you come back.
All right, cool. Yeah, I'll go back. Cayden, I'm impressed. The Saints one too. What guy? What player do you think that was on last year's roster is fighting for his life right now?
Yeah, I guess just looking at the way the question was posed, I'm not going to necessarily include like Eli Ricks because he's not necessarily in my eyes a veteran, some of the young guys, but if a guy that's been on the roster for a long time now that I think could maybe be a surprise cut, and I'm not feeling great about this, and I still think in all likelihood he probably makes the roster, but the way the defensive tackle rotations been going, the way, the top three are obviously locked, and the way Morajoma stepped up to be the fourth guy, I think the way, just from having a really good camp and showing that he's taken a step from year one to year two, and Vic talking about how he thinks, talking about the nose tackle position, how he thinks Milton can play it. I'm not sure if Marlon Tuipulotu is definitely a lock on this roster. I know a lot of people think he is. He's been here for 3 years already, and I think he's been a solid player at times. And I'm not sure what he really offers you other than just being a solid run defender. But you got guys like Thomas Booker, who quietly has one of the better training camps of any player this year. I know he's not a big name. They added him to the practice squad last year. He was a former draft pick of the Texans, a day 3 pick, but I thought he's flashed a lot. And if they're not happy or satisfied necessarily with Marlon's play at nose tackle, maybe that's something they end up picking up on the waiver wire, or at some point this year, another big body in that nose tackle room. You have PJ Mustafir and Gabe Hall in that room as well. They haven't really stood out to me, so maybe that guy isn't on the roster, or maybe it is Thomas Booker with the way he's played. But it seems like a lot of people, and I understand so, for keeping Marlon is that he's the only real player on this team that's a traditional nose. But if I had to go with a wild card for a guy that maybe they don't see the upside in anymore heading into year 4, maybe Marlon Tuipulotu is an outside chance of not being here.
You took my answer. That was good. You think, 'cause I'm looking, I'm like, you know what? Yeah, just the way to feel you're seeing right now, and in terms of the push, I still think, I know he's an undrafted rookie. I still think they think highly of Gabe Hall. Another guy could potentially be a nose tackle as well. That could really get some push as well too. But Marlon, when I look at Marlon and just everything that they need in terms of tackle, I expect Jordan Davis to get a few more snaps in place of keep him on the field in order to change some things. And that's the guy. Marlon to me, it might be the odd man out there. Maybe he'll stash him in a practice squad. He may get another opportunity elsewhere, but that's the guy I see as potentially being out. So good. That was good reasoning and good thought on that one too. Bob, I can let you off the hook if you want.
Marlon, I'm going to go with Marlon. Well, he only played 162 defensive snaps last year. It's not like we're getting rid of Aaron Donald here.
Yeah, now we're all three agreed. That it means it's not going to happen. He's going to be like the third defensive tackle now on the roster because we all agreed on the same thing. Oh, great! Here we go.
He's going to make the Pro Bowl.
See, and that's where we go back to his 5 o'clock somewhere. Because if he makes the Pro Bowl, I know I'm dressing a little going right now in terms of that. Well, guys, we made it to the end of another show. Bob, Cayden, I appreciate you guys for joining me once again. Remember to make sure to read all of our content, NJ.com/Eagles. And we'll have another episode of No Huddle Show coming up next week as well, too, where we'll be able to talk about the Patriots game and preview this the final preseason game with the Vikings and seeing who's going to make this roster or not. So for Bob, for Cayden, I'm Chris. Everybody have a good one. See ya.